On Wednesday, Republicans blocked the Paycheck Fairness Act from coming to a vote in the Senate. It's a bill that's aimed at providing more protections from pay discrimination for workers, but it fell 6 votes short of the supermajority needed to actually bring it to the Senate floor for consideration.
Of this fog of filibuster, we can't even get to a majority vote on how to make sure women get equal pay for equal work. No wonder people are fed up with us. You know, one way to help the economy is for people to make more money. You know what's one of the best ways to make more money? Pay women for equal pay for equal work.
Right now, it's legal for companies to punish employees for even talking with each other about their pay. The Paycheck Fairness Act would change that. For women to file suit for pay discrimination, they have to know what their colleagues are making. And proponents of the law point to the story of Dawn Soto-Kuntz. She was a saleswoman at a Jared jewelry store in Florida. And while doing paperwork one day, she came across documents about a new salesman. He had no experience selling jewelry, but was making significantly more than the store's top seller. She was a woman. So Dawn Soto-Kuntz reviewed more records, and almost all of the men, it turned out, were making more than the women. So she is now one of 12 women from across the country who are part of a suit against the parent company of Jared Jewelers, Sterling Jewelers. If Soto-Kuntz hadn't come across those records, she wouldn't have even known that her male counterparts were getting paid more. Sterling Jewelers, for its part, says the accusations are not true. Also remember Lilly Ledbetter. She is the namesake of the first bill that President Obama signed into law when he came into office in 2009, the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. She worked as a supervisor at a Goodyear plant in Alabama. She lost $200,000 in pay over the course of her career due to gender discrimination. She was making significantly less than her male coworkers with the same job. She didn't even know she was being discriminated against, though, until she received an anonymous tip, because company policy banned the sharing of salary information. The Paycheck Fairness Act is a bill that Connecticut Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro has introduced every Congress since 1997. But this week, practically every Democrat from the White House down made the bill and the broader issue of pay equity a major point of emphasis. And here's a hint. It has to do with politics, because this is an issue that Democrats believe, or at least hope, will grab the attention of a key part of their base in a midterm election that right now isn't shaping up all that well for them. President Obama signed 2 executive orders on Tuesday to increase pay transparency among federal contractors.
I think about my single mom working hard, going to school, trying to raise 2 kids all at the same time. And I think about my grandmother trying to work her way up through her career and hitting the glass ceiling. And I've seen how hard they've worked, and I've seen how they've sucked it up. But at a certain point, we have the power to do something about it for the next generation. And this is a good place to start.
The Paycheck Fairness Act, Democrats hope, will activate everyone. Democrats, independents, African Americans, Latinos, and of course women, single women in particular, are many of the groups that they want mobilized this November, that they need mobilized this November. In 2012, Obama lost men by 7 points, but he won among women by 11 points and therefore was reelected president. These are the politics behind the Paycheck Fairness Act. Democrats knew that Republicans were going to vote against it, but they wanted to get them on the record blocking an equal pay bill. But it wasn't all smooth sailing for Democrats this week, because when they repeatedly touted the line that a woman working full-time makes on average 77% of what a man makes, fact checkers took issue. And it's true that the typical woman earns 77% of what a typical man earns, and pay discrimination is part of it, but it's also the result of other factors that put women at a disadvantage in the workplace. Women take more time out of the workforce to care for children and family members. Men have more jobs at the top of the corporate ladder. They work at different occupations that pay differently. A more accurate measure probably comes from some Cornell University economists who try to do an apples-to-apples comparison. Men and women doing the same job, working the same hours. They found that women in that situation make 91% of what their male counterparts make. They conclude, quote, so you could accurately say in that Obama ad that women get paid 91 cents on the dollar for doing the same work as men. So there was some contention over the numbers Democrats used this week, and Republicans did their best to make hay out of it. Still, the Democrats did achieve their goal of getting conservatives on the record on their views on equal pay.
The notion that the war on women or pay discrimination against women is in the top 20 of problems in the United States is frankly ridiculous.
So this has nothing to do with actually improving the situation of women in the workplace. This has everything to do with a political show vote for the Democrats.
We really don't have a gender salary discrepancy in this country.
And to talk about it, I want to bring in politics writer Molly Ball from The Atlantic, Eleanor Clift, Washington correspondent at the Daily Beast, Democratic pollster Celinda Lake. She's the president of Lake Research Partners. And in Los Angeles, at this very early hour out there, I want to bring in Sandra Fluke, a Democratic candidate for the state Senate in the Golden State. And Sandra, we'll start with you since you got up the earliest for this. At least I think you did.
Thank you.
So, you know, we run those numbers there. There was, and I should maybe put this up on the screen. There was, you know, Hannah Rosen at Slate had a widely circulated article this week called "The Gender Wage Gap Lie," and she's basically saying the 77 cents on the dollar line that Democrats keep using. You know, it really comes close to that 91 cents that those Cornell University economists are talking about, and it really involves a lot of factors that maybe are beyond the control of government. I just wonder sort of what your response to that is. From the standpoint of the government, what is it that the government can be doing to get true pay equity? Is this something that the government should be doing? Because their interpretation, her interpretation, I should say, is that the Paycheck Fairness Act doesn't get you there.
Well, just because the Paycheck Fairness Act doesn't get you there doesn't mean that government stops at that point. The Paycheck Fairness Act is a big part of this because we're arguing about the size of discrimination, not the fact of discrimination. So let's enact the Paycheck Fairness Act and then let's do more. Let's talk about the fact that women are disproportionately the ones making minimum wage. So we need to increase the minimum wage nationally the way that we have in California and the way that I've supported a living wage for hotel workers. Disproportionately women as well. But then let's also do things like address paid family leave and sick time, some of the other factors that decrease women's pay because we're more likely to be the caregivers in our family. Again, legislation that I've committed to introducing in California to protect jobs if someone takes paid family leave. And
so what do you, I think it was Bill Kristol in that montage you were just playing there saying, you know, this wouldn't rank in the top 20 issues if you put it in front of voters. What are you finding? I mean, you're a candidate for office in California right now. I know the Democratic Party is putting a particular emphasis on trying to drive up turnout among women, particularly single women. Where does this issue fall with voters you're talking to, with women you're talking to?
Well, I think if you ask voters anywhere in the country, they're going to say that economic issues are one of their top priorities. And for women, this is part of economic issues. The wage gap costs women on average over $10,000 a year. So it does hit people in their pocketbooks. It is important as an economic issue, absolutely.
I want to open it up more to the panel here. And Celinda, you know, you're a pollster, you work with the numbers all the time. And one thing that sticks out at me, I'll put this up on the screen. This is from 2012. This is the women's vote in the presidential election by marital status. We know Obama won women overall, but this is really the story here because married women actually went for Romney by 7 points. Single women went for Obama by 36 points. Seems to me that when you start talking about the mechanics of turnout for Democrats, and especially in a year like 2014, this is where the game is. This is single women, getting them motivated, getting them to go to the polls. Do you see this push on pay equity as being, will it help in that regard? How does that work?
Well, and I'll tell you, in 2013 we had an even better example, which is Terry McAuliffe, the governor of Virginia, precisely because of the single woman's vote. He won the single woman's vote by 42 points. He lost married women. So absolutely critical that we get unmarried women out to vote, single women, women on their own. This is a huge issue for them. 9 cents every hour or 23 cents every hour. And actually, if you're a single mom, your wage is down to 56 cents an hour compared to your white male married counterparts. So this is a huge issue, and it is the single most motivating issue for single women in terms of something that they think could actually really make a difference.
You say pay equity is the single biggest issue of anything
equal pay.
To get
tough enforcement of equal pay laws. Is the single biggest motivator for unmarried women, followed by minimum wage. So if we want to get unmarried women out, we emphasize these two issues because this is something that has real tangible consequences every single hour that they work.
What do you, Molly, just following the politics of it, what do you make of the, the strategy here? Celinda saying this is the single biggest motivating factor. We could talk about all the factors that are working against Democrats in the midterm climate in 2014. We're always talking about their coalition shows up in the presidential year. We haven't yet seen it shown up in the midterm year. What do you think when you see the push they're making on this issue? Is this something that could tangibly boost them at the polls, do you think?
Well, I do think that Democrats have suffered a bit for the fact that this is so transparently political, that everybody knows this was a messaging bill that had no chance of passing. And I wonder, Celinda would know this better than I do, but I wonder if there's a little bit of fatigue among this cohort of voters who heard throughout the 2012 election Obama touting the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act and maybe think, why do we need another bite at the apple? Why is Congress trying to attack this problem again? Didn't they tell us that they did something about this? Can you tout something as an accomplishment one day and then sort of go back to the well again? I think, some of the stuff with the White House pay gap, which Jay Carney was challenged on aggressively and fairly, in my view, if you're going to cite that 77 cents figure that includes, different occupations, then it's fair to look at the White House where women are in different occupations but do make less than men overall. And so, I think there was a little bit of blowback for the Democrats this week when you have even a liberal columnist like Ruth Marcus calling this demagoguery. I don't think the messaging rollout was as smoothly as they planned, and it is still an uphill battle to get Democratic voters out.
Eleanor, that struck me too. We just put the chart up on the screen that Molly was alluding to. Women in female staffers in the White House making on average 88% of what male staffers making. The White House saying, well, there's different experience levels there. So they're saying, well, there's a reason for it, which you're hearing some of the pushback to that 77% line. And then Ruth Marcus, as Molly was saying, she wrote this week, this is how she concluded her column. She said, as I said, I'd vote yes on the bill, meaning the Paycheck Fairness Act, but I can understand the concerns of those who worry about floods of litigation and business decisions second-guessed by federal judges. There's a difference between opposing the Paycheck Fairness Act and opposing paycheck fairness. Politicians who choose to confuse the two may score a cheap political point, but it's not a fair one. That issue that Molly's saying is there a risk here for Democrats in almost going to the well too much on this issue?
I don't think so. There's no risk at all. Equal pay for equal work is a slogan that goes back to the early suffragists. Every female voter out there has a sense that they're not doing as well in this economy for lots of reasons, and I think women understand. It's because they do child rearing, they take time off to care for parents and so forth. They take a lot of time out. But hey, if there were child care, if the gender rules were set up more equitably, maybe that wouldn't happen. So I do think there's a sense of unfairness, and we use the courts is how we sort these things out. And if you pass the Paycheck Fairness Bill, women might have more access to the courts. But since when are people worried about access to the courts? We're a very litigious society. And I think women should have the right to do that. And you started this segment pointing to the women at the jewelry store. This isn't some little mom and pop store. This is a huge chain of jewelry stores, and this apparently or allegedly has been going on. So I think there are still some examples of blatant discrimination, but it's more complicated. But politics is simple, assessing what the pay gap is in every state and locale is a complicated exercise. Well, the White House was a little embarrassed, but
right.
Politics simplifies things, and I think this is, as Celinda's polling shows, women get this.
Let me just before we have to take a break, I want to get Sandra one more question quickly though, and it's the question sort of that Molly raised. We've heard from Democrats since 2009. The big sort of signature achievement of President Obama on this issue was the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. Why do you need the Paycheck Fairness Act? What specifically does that do that the Lilly Ledbetter Act didn't do?
Thank you so much for asking, because I really want to clarify this. The Lilly Ledbetter Act fixed a loophole that the Supreme Court opened up in a very damaging decision. It was not actually a step forward on rectifying this concern. It was fixing a problem the Supreme Court created. The Paycheck Fairness Act, on the other hand, would be the first legislation in decades, in like 40 to 50 years, to actually move us forward. And it does that by making sure that women's access to the courts is very similar to folks who are discriminated against on the basis of race in their pay. This is not some sort of new radical litigation that women would be able to bring in the courts. This is the type of litigation and protection against discrimination that other groups have enjoyed for a long time and that builds on the work from 40 or 50 years ago.
Okay, I want to thank Sandra Fluke. She's a Democratic candidate for state Senate in California. Thank you for getting up so early and joining us this morning. And I know Molly wanted to get in, and she will as soon as we come back from this break.